Okay, Level Engine here. I'm going to be doing a Castlevania III Alucard run and providing commentary and just explaining what to expect from the run. How things are supposed to go. So, for the most part, I'll be explaining what's going on in the run. So this is a submission video for the North American Speedrunner Assembly. Not to be confused with the space program. So as soon as this cinematic is done playing and I gain control of Trevor on the very first frame on the very first screen of Stage 1, that's when time starts. Time will start right about now. Okay, so for Stage 1, it's pretty straightforward and simple. The main goal here is to get triple shot holy water. Even double shot will do. And it won't take long. Once you see like how quickly the first boss goes down, you'll pretty quickly realize why going for holy water is such a good idea. And there's also going to be getting basic weapon upgrades as well. For example, I just picked up something to make my whip a bit stronger. So for Stage 1, it's really basic as to what to expect. Of course, I'm going to try to not miss any of these jumps, because that would look silly if I did. Yeah, there's just a few tidbits of movement that are a little more on the advanced side that you'll have to remember, but this stage you can pretty much just always play it the same way every time. There's like no randomness in how this stage plays. If you do the exact same things every time on this stage, you will always get the same outcomes. There's next to no randomness at all on this stage. And even then, at least for the Alucard route, there's not too much randomness in general. So I already have a double shot on my holy water. Just gotta get past these zombies, jumping over them is the simplest way to clear them. And if I recall correctly, this is the fastest way to clear out this screen. Just doing this. And of course I want to just jump on that tiny little fireball and touch the right-hand side of it, so I'm boosting right. So I'm going forward still with the damage boost. Because I don't want to get knocked back, because that would just be like a little time loss there. You can just kind of run through this guy here. So now you're about to see the holy water in action. It's even crazier once you get to at least a double shot on it, and I have a triple. And just like that, that wasn't even really a boss fight. And then there's Stage 3. Yes, I said Stage 3, you're not hearing things, we skip Stage 2. There's only one reason to go to Stage 2. Especially considering it takes like 5 minutes to do, even if you're going through like on a speed run. Stage 2 takes like about 5 minutes to do. Considering you're going up a clock tower and then back down it because the bridge to Dracula's castle actually breaks halfway up the tower. So you gotta go right back down, but you meet one of your spirit helpers, Grant, if you go that way. He's a completely different character you can play as, but for the sake of this submission, you're not gonna see Grant. So we're just gonna completely skip Stage 2. Unless you want to get Grant, or maybe just have fun playing the stage and listen to the nice music, I'd advise skipping 2 entirely, because all you really get for it is, like, Grant. And depends on how you play the game, he might not be, like, your most preferred spirit helper. So now I gotta talk about the owls here. This is probably one of the more random things you'll have to worry about in the Alucard route. Speaking of randomness, I just got a weapon drop, which means I lost the one I already had, which is not what I want to do in the slightest. So now I have the wrong weapon, but there are worse places to get the wrong weapon. As much as I don't want to get the wrong weapon ever, there are worse places to do it. Now might be a good time to bring up this little bit of randomness as well. Enemies can occasionally drop sub-weapons, which you usually don't want because when you pick those up, it means you lose the weapon you already had. Gonna play it safe to stop and kill that bone pillar, so I have 1 extra bit of health for frogs coming up. in the next stage. Because there's the transition from stage 3-2 to 4-1, and you don't get full heal from it. Granted, there was actually a piece of safety meat hidden, like, right behind the last screen of 3-2, but I'll just try and carry on without it. So this is tricky. Frogs are semi-random, and you have to have good reaction time to hit a bunch of them. Yeah, when they jump in front of you like that, you have to have good reaction time to jump and whip at almost the exact same time. You want to be whipping almost immediately after you jump to be able to hit the frog, and you want to be jumping as soon as you hear the noise of the frog actually hopping out of the swamp water. It requires good reaction time to do that screen quickly, and sometimes even good luck, which sometimes you might not have good enough luck just to dodge all those frogs. Mudmen not quite as bad to deal with. So I picked that axe up on purpose, and then I'll just have to explain further as to why losing the holy water earlier in 3 wasn't so bad, and why there were worse places to lose it. Because you actually want to get the axe in 4, and then get the holy water back with with no shot multiplier. And there's a pretty specific reason as to why it's set up this way. It has to actually do with the final stage of the game. Because there's this pretty specific weapon that's best at dealing with Dracula, and it's not the holy water. It has to do with you actually switching weapons right at the end of the game to get ready for Dracula. Now this guy's pretty easy. Oh, can I undo this? Okay. Accidentally stopped the timer. I mean, I'm used to usually taking a split every time I pick up an orb, but I just have a timer going, so I don't want to just accidentally wipe it out. So that's a bat that's supposed to split up and fly around the screen, but I usually hit it before it can even fly anywhere around the screen. You're going to see that fight again, and I'll be killing with Alucard later, which is in stage 7, but that's going to be a lot trickier to actually pull off, because of how Alucard's fireballs work differently from Trevor's whip. Alucard's going to have that same fight later in the run, but it's going to be way trickier. So for now, it's just a bunch of simple movements for the most part, with stage 5 up until you get to where Alucard is. Okay, we didn't have a shot multiplier drop anywhere in that little hallway with the spikes, which is nice. Because I'm going to try and keep this at a double for the rest of the game. Which honestly won't be too hard to do, since eventually I'll start using Alucard way more than Trevor anyways. So it won't be very hard to do, just keep a double on this the whole game. Yes, this is the fastest way to clear the first half of stage 5. Yeah, that is intentional. I'm just gonna make sure I don't actually die to that Fuzzbuster. I was supposed to jump over it, but I accidentally whipped, like, right before jumping, so didn't actually hop over it. And I didn't want to just touch it by accident and die, because that hit would have been fatal. So I only need 3 hearts for this whole Alucard boss fight. Just requires a couple of simple setups. Once you've done them enough, remembering them won't be a problem. And then that boss you just killed will turn into another character which you can recruit to travel along with you to fight Dracula. That's actually going to be Dracula's forgotten son, Alucard. I guess the fact that Alucard is Dracula spelled backwards kind of helps you catch on to the hint. We'll take him with us. Because if we don't, then stage 7 will be even worse than it already is. So you're gonna get to see Alucard in action as soon as I regain control on 5-6. So the frame I gain control, I typically switch to Alucard here. Who's not all that good at combat. Hope I didn't miss anything important on this screen. Oh, I didn't want to take a knockback there. Whoops. But Alucard can transform into a bat and just fly around a bunch of the game. He's not very good at combat, but he can turn into a bat and do flying, which allows you to bypass a lot of the platforming in the game that would otherwise take much longer to actually go and do. So when it came to optimizing the Alucard route, the main question was, how long can you actually make use of Alucard's bat form for? Like, just how much can you push this bat form to the limit to make it as fast as possible? And another boss that should die very quickly to Holy Water abuse. Takes more damage than his younger brother, or his other brother in Stage 1, but still. He goes down pretty easily if you know what you're doing with the Holy Water. Sure, you can spawn bones that can attack you, but the Holy Water actually takes care of them all if you place it just right. So we're going to be deferring to Trevor for most of the bosses. And if you're just looking forward to putting some times on the leaderboard and not necessarily going for a world record, you can just freely defer to Trevor for all the boss fights. But I'm not going to necessarily do that. Alright, so Stage 6, we're going to get to see more Alucards flying, and also some skips through ceilings, which were only more recently discovered to just save even more time. Yeah, even this stage has also gone through some pretty significant routing changes to make further use of just what Alucard can do in his bat form. I hope I have enough hearts to go and do this. I might not. I might be one heart short to go and try and do this. I'll just opt to do this screen like a slightly slower way. You can actually transform into a bat immediately upon entering this screen right off the stairs, but I don't think I really had enough hearts to go and try and do that. I could have ran out of hearts. And I was forced to go for a little ceiling clip with that axe being thrown there, and it was pretty precise, but I landed it, and there's this one too. Actually taking damage off of projectiles in a clever way to just also damage boost off the projectiles and into the ceiling, to then fly through the ceiling. And Frankenstein, probably one of the more random boss fights in the entire run. Sometimes it makes a bunch of rocks drop, and sometimes it lags, other times it doesn't. Sometimes the rocks are easy to dodge, other times they're not. I guess that fight can usually make or break most runs, especially if they're going for world record pace. That fight makes it or breaks it for a lot of runs. Sometimes you can just get a fight that you can't really salvage and lose way too much trying to keep up with the world record pace. And now it's serious time, we're at Stage 7. There are so many places where you can just choke good paces in this stage, it's not even funny. And here's probably what's going to be the hardest damage boost for Alucard in the run. And I was actually 1 pixel off of hitting it too. I had to be even more precise with how I flew upwards into that block there, as to not get kind of nudged down by hitting the top of it. I saw Alucard kind of get nudged down a couple pixels, so that's probably why I missed it. Yeah, toughest ceiling clip for Alucard to pull off in the run. I guess unless maybe an even harder one comes along. Assuming it can actually save time. Yeah, as it stands right now, that's the toughest thing for Alucard to do in the run, probably. And not too long after you have to go through that ordeal, you're gonna get a very precise bat fight as well you have to worry about. Though there are a couple of other spots you can stand in the bat fight to make it even easier, but I'm gonna just still go for like the fastest, but probably one of the trickiest spots from which to do the fight. It's important you get this big heart. You need to have enough hearts to do all the flying in this stage because there's a lot of it. I got all the bats. Nice. There's a very tight timing window for that whole fight. Especially when there's more and more bats you have to hit at once, then it just gets even worse. You still can't sleep on the rest of this stage either. Even once you get past the worst parts of it, you still can't sleep on any part of this stage, really. And even then, that screen with the birds can sometimes go wrong too, depends on what kind of pattern they give you. Especially if you don't just jump to the left and try and just jump straight up, which is slightly faster, but definitely riskier. Considering most of the time the birds sort of converge towards the center of where you jump anyways. Like, if you jump to the left, they just kind of converge to the center, and it would be easier to just avoid getting hit by both of them if you do that, like, way more frequently. You have to have at least 9 hearts to fly under the bridge in 7-6. Well, the one with the Medusas on it. I had a little more than 9. I think I might have had, like, 13 or 12 or something. So that was, like, not a problem. And then there's an auto-scroller after this. It's just memorization of a couple of enemy locations. You don't really have to rush this auto-scroller most of the time anyways. Especially once you get to the top half of it. Because you can't go any faster than the screen scrolling lets you go. I guess now would be a good time to switch characters because we'll be fighting 3 bosses and Alucard's not good at fighting any of the 3 bosses we're coming up to right now. He can't really fight any of them well, so we'll just switch back to Trevor for all this. And then pretty much right back to Alucard once Stage 8 begins. Just so we can do more flying to skip more platforming. Cyclops certainly had me nervous for a second, because sometimes he can refuse to charge upon spawning on the right side of the screen and just kind of walk into you, and not let you get an easy setup for a fast kill on him. And then there's Leviathan, who I'm gonna get in 2 cycles. Found a consistent setup for it that pretty much works every time I need it to. Still remember when I was struggling on 2-cycling Leviathan. Even though if he gets the jump a second time, you're not falling that far behind, but still. It's nice to be able to kill him in 2 cycles rather than just having to wait for like a 3rd cycle, or having him jump and get away from you again right as he's about to die. Alright, so Stage 8. Definitely another make it or break it moment in this run. Because of both the boss fight, especially if you're going into it with Alucard, and it's pretty easy to mess up if you do, and also one axe throw from one of these axe armors, not this one later in the stage. This is also very... oops. I was not supposed to do that. I was not supposed to get hit there by a spider projectile. So I'm probably going to opt to take a different approach to just getting through this stage. It's definitely faster to just let this bone skeleton here throw a bone at you and just kind of clip through the ceiling off that, but I want to save the health. So the axe is being thrown too high for me to jump into it right now to clip into the ceiling and take another damage boost. So I have to wait for this guy to throw a low axe so I can actually go through the ceiling. And he's not throwing it. He's still not throwing it. So far that was like, what, 6 high axes in a row? Now 7? 7 high axes in a row, are you kidding me? Because if he throws it high and not low, it's too high up in the air for you to actually jump into to clip to the ceiling. And I'm going in with barely any safety net into the death fight, which I'm going to attempt with Alucard. If I can set up the first couple seconds of the fight correctly, and find a good spot to stand to just do the rest of Phase 1, shouldn't be a problem. We had just enough health to pull that off. Phase 2 is a lot safer than Phase 1, for sure. This one's a lot more straightforward, but still, don't sleep on it. Don't sleep on anything, really. No matter how easy it may seem, still don't sleep on it. I guess now would be a good time to mention that every high axe you get, assuming you don't just climb down the stairs to try for another axe, you lose 3 seconds, and I got 7 of them, so you just lost 21 seconds there to bad luck. Alright, stage 9. There's a safer way to get rid of these hunchbacks and flea men and harpies, but I'm gonna do it the fast way. And get that jump shot, which is pretty tricky to land. You can actually take time to stop to kill some of these flea men that are high up in the air, but if you do it that way, it's faster, but it's tougher to pull off. Especially the jump shot with the 2 flea men right next to each other. That's very easy to mess up. And then if you're really unlucky with trying to just get the flea men off the screen and they overcrowd you, you could be in serious trouble. So a bunch of the stage after that point is just simple flying. These enemies will always be in the same place if you always do the same movements. That's just simple flying, once you get the hang of it. And there's flying there too. So really, the entire route just basically came down to the question of just how much flying can I do with Alucard? Just how much can I optimize the movement as a bat to push down the time as far as we can? How optimized can it really get? Speaking of which, doesn't matter at all what we do here since this is another auto-scroller. But everywhere else, it's just a question of how much can we squeeze the potential out of the bat form to make this as fast as possible to run. And Stage 8 had to be looked at very carefully, since it also includes a final boss with 3 forms. And that consumes a lot of hearts to do the fight. At the very minimum, you're usually using up 26 hearts to do that entire fight, so you have to have those. Plus, you have to have enough hearts throughout the stage just to do all the flying properly, if you want to do it optimally, so Stage 8 really had to be closely analyzed. And I certainly didn't figure it out myself. And it will be coming up after this last set of rooms in 9. Still gotta maybe have to worry about the birds. No, we're fine. Birds aren't gonna screw us over. And then this is just another boss fight where you just use Trevor. Yeah, especially in the American version, you're gonna be just switching to Trevor for almost all the boss fights. Or you can just use Trevor on all the boss fights, including Frankenstein and Death, if you're less experienced, and just want to get some runs finished. Especially Death, because, as I said earlier, fighting Death with Alucard, it's really easy to mess up. I was actually within, like, I don't know, half a second of dying in this run to Death. So first things first, I have to set this screen up properly, in such a way where I'm throwing a holy water to my right to release a triple shot, and then grabbing an axe to my left. So I have the axe, but the triple shot's still on the ground, so I pick up the axe first, but the triple shot's still out there, so I grab that, and then I have essentially transferred the shot multiplier to my axe. Because this is the weapon I'm going to use against Dracula. So that's kind of what you want to do. You want to just switch weapons and take the shot multiplier with you to that new weapon. So that's why we cut the double shot for the whole run. Because if you had triple already, it wasn't going to drop there. I mean, it wouldn't drop for you if you already had it, so that's why it was important I kept the double. We're going to be clipping through another ceiling again. So I'm going to have to focus to make sure I do hit it still. I don't want to miss this. I'm usually terrible at recovery if I get this wrong. But we got it. I usually can't recover that to save my life if I get it wrong, that ceiling clip. So now I gotta just worry about a Dracula fight. There's quite a bit of precision in Phase 1 if you want to do it optimally. Phase 2 you can't sleep on either, nor can you sleep on Phase 3. Especially considering for Phase 3, you have to do it in such a way you don't miss a platform cycle. Okay, that was a really good Phase 1. Barely got that in time. Before just taking a hit and getting knocked around for a bit. If I take the hit, though, it won't be that much slower. But I'd still rather show this off the best way possible. Oh. Whoops. Good thing I got the extra axe in. Good thing I had one axe extra, otherwise we would have been in trouble. Oof, that was too close. I almost got hit by that laser there. So the platforms move around in cycles. So you have to make sure you don't miss a cycle, because if you do, you have to wait for the second cycle of platforms to finish before the orb will show up and you can stop the run. Run is only complete when the orb shows up. Only then can you call time once you pick it up. But if the orb doesn't appear while the platforms are moving, they have to stop their movement, and only then can you finish the run. So that's why it's so important you just can do Dracula 3 in one cycle. But thankfully I almost never get it wrong anymore. Yeah, to think 21 seconds were lost to bad luck alone. And I got a 26:32. Yeah, so that's Castlevania III Dracula's Curse with Alucard. That right there could have easily been 21 seconds faster. And even then, it's still deathless. I got to show off exactly what I wanted to show off with this route. Maybe except for a couple of tricks, like 7-1 ceiling skip, but I could actually get that in my marathon run if I know what I'm doing.